Hey guys, this is Andrew Lee, your admin over at the California Insurance Agents Group, and we did recently have a California Fair Plan questions and answers that was part of our group, and it just felt like for some agents, a lot of questions weren't completely answered. So I wanted to take the time to actually thank Aurora for hopping on here, as she is the expert with California Fair Plan plans. And whatever questions we've initially missed, we definitely want to do our best to answer those respective questions. So, um, Aurora, you were just mentioning just sort of what the situation is with agents writing these policies and, having their beneficiaries really entrusting them with their livelihood, of their house. Um, what are some on that topic? What are some solutions, some words of wisdom,
Yeah.
encouragement that you can start with? Yeah.
I mean, first, I would say that the simplest piece of advice that I could give agents is to read the contract. The California Fair Plan contract is very short. It's like 19 pages. It's very succinct in what is covered and what is not covered, and the limitations of the policy. And that's the first portion of it because we still battle everyday agents that are telling clients that the California Fair Plan is for wildfire only, which it is not. It is for any sort of fire. It doesn't matter what the origin is. If it is a fire, it is running through the California Fair Plan, as well as wind and hail and vandalism and mischief. If you are going to pair it with a difference in conditions policy, you need to have all of those coverages selected on there, with the exception of State Farm. But that's a huge exception to the rule. Everybody else needs to make sure that they're clicking all of those buttons for that coverage. So there's just a lot of still misinformation that happens out there with the California Fair Plan, again, about what it covers, how it pays out after a claim, things like that. That the producers really need to be reading that contract to understand it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? This is the hot topic that's just been, really being asked in the group right now. So, I what I was gonna do is right now I'm just checking all the comments and just try to get to as many questions as we can, just from what I've seen. Aurora, did you have any questions that was like a good question that you answered that people should know about?
Yeah, I mean, I did consistently see in there about communicating or calling into the California Fair Plan and how do they train those customer service people better. And what I really want to emphasize is that they're customer service. They're not underwriting, they're not agents, I don't think any of them are licensed. And so they're simply there to say, yes, like send it to this email, or yes, we see that this check was received, or it's very limited information. So utilizing the broker system to look at the memos that say this, if you have a question for underwriting, this is the email that you send over, and really guide your processes and your agency around the turn times of, 6 to 10 business days. Billing might be 3 to 5 business days. If you have an urgent evidence of insurance request or an effective date change, those go over to CS FAPS, right? So knowing exactly who and what to send and what that time period looks like will stop you from spending 4 hours on the phone only to be frustrated because you call in and don't get the answer that you're looking for, and you get directed to the exact processes that Fairplan has already provided to a broker within their memo system.
Gotcha. And then there is a specific email that they can email as well too. Is that sort of the issue where they're not sort of answering? Is that what it is?
Well, people want instant responses, right? And so people really have to, when I say like change their mindset about California Fair Plan, is until State Farm pulled out a year ago and some of these other companies, there was only a small portion of agents that were really utilizing the California Fair Plan. And they were doing it under a single agency code. And now they've got they added like 50,000 brokers in less than a year. And so they weren't expecting that infrastructure to explode overnight. They weren't expecting the market to turn. And so with agents expecting that this company is going to immediately respond because they didn't, in many cases that I experienced, did not properly give themselves enough time to handle everything that they need to on that file, then the frustration grows. So if they implement those processes in house, they can take a lot of this off of their plate, a lot of, emailing over urgent things that bog down the system that aren't urgent in nature. They're urgent because the agent didn't take the task that they needed to do.
Sounds familiar. That leaks into my line too.
Yeah.
Um, all right, cool. So that's a good answer. I've had clients or not clients, members asking, the system is glitchy 24/7. It's not as user friendly to get a quote anymore. I always get errored out of the quote and have to redo them no matter what screen I'm on. I get errored out. It's very frustrating. Now, I know that you and Ryan were sort of giving, advice on how to do specific like little tips and tricks to get it going, or you really have to play around with the application sometimes. Any insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, there are for sure a lot of glitches in the system. A lot of it happens from overuse, so a lot of agents being in there in peak hours and times. One of the things that we do, and I'll tell you, to combat this, is we do quotes earlier in the morning, later in the evening when those peak times are off. The other thing that is really useful is the incognito tab. A lot of the errors that are happening in California Fair Plan is because the cookies and the cache are retaining information from another file. And so they're carrying over and they're causing that oops error. When you're working in incognito, you're avoiding those cookies and those cache errors that are collecting that you would be doing in a normal browser. So there's that aspect of it. Some of the others is you really just kind of have to play around in there. So the way that I get around the oops error on the first name is, even though I know skip the quick quote is not valid, I start in the quick quote. I go through, validate that rate, complete, send it over to the application. And then I fill out the rest of the information on that page. And then once you do that, you go back up and switch it to individual. And about 95% of the time, it's going to hold it at that point because it has the rest of the information in there. And then you just have to re-input the person's name. So that's one fix on there. The other fix is to choose fire only on the quick quote portion of that. And then for some reason that seems to clear it. And then once you get past that page, you can go back and switch it to all of the perils that are needed. And then that brings you through the page. Another of the things is not being able to get a quote through pricing. That is tied into, do they have prior insurance or not in the underwriting tab? If you select no, they don't have prior insurance, that removes a lot of those pricing errors that are in there. So as instead of calling California Fair Plan, where your group becomes very, very vital, is somebody can put that oops error in there and say, hey, how can I get around this? We're going to answer them in most cases between me and Ryan and Chris and Phil. We're going to be able to answer that a lot faster than having somebody go and sit on hold with the California Fair Plan because they don't know how to work around those errors.
All right. Uh, all right, and we are back. Okay, cool. So people know the answers on that. I got another question, saying why agents don't have access to billing information. We can't see payment history and future billing schedules with due dates. And if a client asks, the only way to find out is to call California Fair Plan with crazy hold times.
So there's a couple of the programs that are in there. So if they go in, the first thing that we do is we start with looking and pulling up the policy and going into what's called the hourglass feature of it, the magnifying glass. When they click on that and go to the last page of the billing cycle, it's going to tell you if there's been anything logged into the actual policy itself. It'll say, like, this is the last payment, this is when the next invoice is going to be due, this is the due date, and this is the amount. So you have that feature within the policy. Is it 100% correct all the time? No. But then you also have on the main California Fair Plan page, before entering into the broker system, they have a spot that says check policy status, check payment. And you can put that person's information in there and it'll tell you, like, this is the last payment that was received, this is the next payment that's due. On top of that, California Fair Plan sends out the invoices to the brokers on every single file. And so that piece of information is also available to you. And if you can't get any resolution from all three of those things, or if there's way too much of a conflict, that's when you would email billing@cfpnet.com and give them at least 3 to 5 business days to go ahead and take care of that for you.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Another question I got here is why do we get cancellation emailed or cancellations emailed to us the day or the day after the policy has been canceled?
So that cancellation is like basically your heads up that that person didn't pay their invoice. This is again one of those processes that as agents, it is your responsibility to build within your agency. As those invoices come in, you forward them over to the client, you put a task in your system that says this person should have paid their bill by this date. And if they haven't, it's up to you, errors and omissions wise, whether or not you want to let them know that they hadn't made that payment yet and notify them, or you just wait until that cancellation notice hits and you forward it over to the client. But you guys, the cancellation notice only comes when they haven't taken care of that original invoice. I cannot think of a single time that we got a cancellation notice that when we went to look at the original invoice, it wasn't there. There's no surprise cancellations that I have seen in the system to date, even with the new system, even with the new Duck Creek rollout.
Gotcha. Okay. And somebody asked, I've had at least a few ev okay, I have had at least a few every month where the insured or the mortgagee was mailed a check to the fair plan or mailed a check to the fair plan. The payment was cashed out but not applied to any policy, and then the policy is canceled for non-payment. Is that going back to the initial other question that was asked?
Yep. So again, and this is people need to do their processes differently within their own agency. We set it up that we're always going to check like a week beforehand to see whether or not that mortgage is paid so we can have that conversation with the client to say, hey, it hasn't been received yet. We'll email something over to billing@cfpnet.com, see whether or not they have it. If we have something from the mortgage, then we get that number, we get the date it was cashed, the check, all of that stuff, and we forward that to billing@cfp.net to say, hey, this was cashed by you on this date. They track it, and then they send a notification over to underwriting to have that policy reinstated. If you have proof of that policy being paid and them cashing that check, they will reinstate the policy. They will have coverage. They're not going to not reinstate that policy. Is it going to be as fast as you want it to be? No. There's several times that I've had customers where that process has taken more than 45 days, but legally they cash that check as long as we have proof that it was before the day before the policy was expiring, then they will reinstate that policy. If you ever have a situation where you're concerned and you think, no, they're not doing that, then that's when you reach out to myself or Phil, where we can actually help moderate that up to the top people that can get that reversed for you.
Awesome. You just answered question number two out of the two I was going to ask next. So thanks for that. I got maybe a very specific one for you. I'm sure you know this. For condo, homeowners like dash six HO dash six policies, can you confirm whether or not coverage is offered in the same way a traditional HO-6 offers wall walls and coverage.
Walden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you
So it does, it's under betterment and improvements, though. That's how
go.
California
Okay, gotcha.
categorizes.
That's what they were asking. The wording on the quotes show improvements, alterations, and additions, and it is ambiguous, and the underwriters have not responded to the emails.
Yeah, so that is where the interior walls coverage is for a condo policy. That's where you enter it in, and it works just like a standard condo policy. So much like if you guys have Safeco, their Safeco program puts the dwelling coverage under that same aspect.
Gotcha. Okay. And I mean, those are, I know some of the answers were already, or the questions were already answered on the chat portion of our group. And thank you, Ryan, for doing a good job of following up. And again, thank you, Aurora. Um, so again, is there going to be auto pay enabled?
They're working on auto pay. In the meantime, they do have what is called a stored payment option. So a customer can put their information into there and they can go in at any point in time before that bill's due and just hit pay, and it'll say, do you want to use the stored payment on there? They can say yes, and it'll go right through. The same thing for an agent. There are some elderly people that we just choose to do that as an agent, where they've sent us an authorization that says, yes, make our payment. And we go in there each month and we make that payment for on behalf of the insured based off of that authorization. So those are few and far between, but that is as close to automatic draft as they have right now, but they are working on that process.
Okay, cool. And I got, why are none of the clients getting their invoices in the mail?
So they tell us that they are. Again, this is one of those things that maybe the realization of the fact that it's printing on the 4th of October, and then it goes and it sits in the mailroom, and then it gets mailed out. And then that mail takes, we all know now in today's world after COVID, like 5 business days to reach a client. And so it seems like they're not getting that invoice, but they are. And again, that's why we've chosen as an agency to forward each and every invoice that we get to the client, because we're getting it real time. We're getting it at the printing portion of that process and not getting it in the mail. So again, that's one way to combat it. Whoever is the main person listed on your fair plan within your agency is the one that is getting those invoices. So I do know, after talking to endless amounts of agents over the year, a lot of those principals that set it up didn't realize and didn't know that the agency was not, or the client was not, getting those invoices, and they've just been going into an email and not being processed anywhere. But you do have that in there where they are sending those to you via your emails.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And the other bulk of the questions were on the chat in our group, on the California Insurance Agents group. And Ryan seems like he took care of a lot of it. So I don't want to be repetitive here, and do want to respect your time. Is there something that we haven't covered, or something that that agents need to know about Fair Plan?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that we're seeing after claims time, or when people are sending us quotes to review and help, is that people don't understand when there need to have a separate application. So if you have a primary house and it has a detached guest house and it has any sort of cooking mechanism, so if it's got a stove, if it's got a hot plate, if it has a wood stove, anything that can actually create fire, that requires its own policy under the California Fair Plan. So a lot of agents are out there right now and they are putting guest house with ovens on other structures. These clients are paying for coverage that they're never going to get paid out. So we saw this really heavily in Caldor after that fire, where entire guest suites were put under the main structure, and they don't pay out on the claim. So that's a really huge piece for people to understand, is that they need to schedule those secondary units on a property. And those secondary units, the entire parcel, the most coverage that you can give a client is 3 million. So if you've got 2.5 million because you've got a large house and then you've got a detached guest house, then you're going to have to lower the coverage on the main house to be able to make that work. You can't go 2.5 million on the main house, 2.5 million on a guest house, and they're going to pay. They're going to cap it out per parcel. And again, we see a lot of claim denials that happen as a result of that because they tried to over insure that single parcel.
Gotcha. So yeah, guys, I mean, you heard it from Aurora herself. And again, like I posted in the group, I am a health insurance agent. So if you guys are going to ask me questions, I will have no idea on how to answer them. So if you did have any additional questions, I mean, we do want to go over, questions in the group and things like that. If you're not in the group, please join it. It's California Insurance Agents Group on Facebook, or comment some questions below because we do have the experts of the California Fair Plan in our group, and essentially me and Aurora were talking about this before we were on here that we're just doing this for the good of the industry. Really, I'm a health insurance agent. I have nothing to do with homeowners or anything like that. And Aurora's part of, she's doing her own thing. And so we're taking time out of our, our schedule here to make sure that all these questions are answered. You guys are not going through, hell and back. And if you are, at the very least, you have clarity as to why you're going through hell and back, and maybe there's a solution that you've learned today. So yeah, Aurora, I do thank you for being on and taking the time again. This is very much, we're doing this for the good of the industry. So I very much appreciate this. Any parting words or anything you want to plug?
No, just I mean we're here, so you guys can reach out to me on Facebook. You can reach me direct. I do Zoom, so there's somebody else that was asking for a Zoom. So if you really want to have help navigating, we can jump on a Zoom. You can share your screen. I can walk you through how to do some of those things, answer any questions that you have in regards to the program itself. But yeah, I'm always available. So anything we can do to help you guys navigate through this madness, we're here for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of our group and really helping out. I mean, you're a huge, resource, and I really do appreciate that. I mean, just what I've been seeing, I'm like, man, this is very, like, it's beautiful. People are getting their questions answered, and now there's discourse amongst other people, but it's just good to hear from an authority as to what's happening. So, hope this video helped you guys, especially, our fellow agents over on the PNC side. And if this video did help, please like and subscribe. Again, you can comment more questions below if you do have any more. Maybe we might do another one. Maybe we're over it because we've done a lot of this. But in the case that you do, please go ahead and comment below. But Aurora, thank you so much for your time.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much for helping. Thank you so much for the information. Thank you so much for setting all that up with, California Fair Plan. And you're an awesome person for that. So appreciate it.
Well, thank you for navigating this too. You're doing great.
All right, appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next time, and we'll have a totally different topic we're going to talk about. We're sort of going to put this to rest, and hopefully, you guys have a good rest of your year, and hope you guys prosper Q4. I'll see you guys at the next video. Thanks.
Bye.